Prynhawn da, good evening, and thank you all for joining us today to celebrate Vote 16 in Wales in the lead-up to the 2021 Senedd elections. Before we start, there are a few things to run through. This event is bilingual and simultaneous translation is available by clicking the translation icon at the bottom of your screen. It should look like a bit of a globe at the end there. If you do require translation, please change your preferences as I will be turning to Welsh shortly. We ask that you do not take any images or videos of this live event, but please do feel free to share the event on social media. Our handles will now be posted in the Q&A function. This evening's manifestos represent the views of the young people and not the body that they are representing. After each party presents, we will be opening the floor to questions from the audience. If you would like to submit a question, then please do so using the Q&A function. And lastly, if we can ask the attendees to click the top right-hand corner to select speaker's view, this will give you the best viewing opportunity. And we can now officially start the event. And just a reminder that I'll now be turning to Welsh, so if you could please change your language preferences if needs be. Mae'r digwyddiad heddiw yn rhan o pleidleisio 16 y Senedd, sy'n rhoi platfform I bobl ifanc trafod materion sy'n bwysig iddyn nhw ac I ddysgu mwy am etholiad y Senedd, a fydd yn cael ei gynnal ar y 6 o Fai, sy'n rhoi cyfle I roi llais I bobl ifanc. Os ydych chi'n 16 neu'n hyn, eleni gallwch chi bleidleisio dros yr ymgeiswyr a rydych chi eisiau cynrychiol chi yn y Senedd. Mae 60 aelod o'r Senedd sy'n cael ei ethol bob 5 mlynedd I wneud y penderfyniadau sy'n effeithio ar ein bywydau ni I gyd, gan gynnwys ein gofal iechyd, cyllid ar gyfer addysg, trethu a swyddi yng Nghymru. Os ydych chi'n 16 neu'n hyn, heb gofrestru eto, bydd angen I chi wneud hyn cyn yr 19 o Ebrill trwy wefan gov.uk. Bydd y link yma yn dilyn yn y Q&A section. A gan ei bod hi'n flwyddyn I ddathlu'r ffaith bod pobl ifanc 16 a 17 oed yn gallu pleidleisio, rwy'n falch iawn o gallu cael ymuno a phleidio a phobl ifanc wrth iddyn nhw ystyried beth sy'n bwysig I bobl ifanc ledled Cymru, a pa materion sy'n bwysig I nhw ac eisiau rhoi sylw iddyn nhw ag i'r genedlaethau yr dyfodol. Yn ymuno ni heddiw mae 5 plaid o bobl ifanc o bob cwr o Gymru. Mae gennym ni Plaid Lles y Bobl o Ysgol Gyfun Treforys. Mae gennym ni Plurdd Gobaith Cymru sy'n cynrychioli'r urdd. Mae gennym ni Ywenctid Crughywel o Ysgol Uwchradd Crughywel. Dyfodol Pobl Ifanc o Gwasanaeth Ienctid Torfaen. A Plaid Fytholwyrdd o Gyngor Ienctid Crughywel. We will now be turning back to English. For the first party we are hearing from will be the People's Welfare Party from Morriston Comprehensive School. Please can the members of this party please turn your cameras and mics on.
Hi.
Hi, thanks for joining me. If you'd like to get started on your manifestos.
Good evening, Prynhawn da. My name is Ella Kenny and I am the leader of the People's Welfare Party. I'm the Secretary of State for Health, Phoebe Moult.
Hi, I'm Corey Jones, the Minister of Education.
The People's Welfare Party is dedicated to supporting the community that is Wales, economically, environmentally, and lawfully. We understand that life under the coronavirus pandemic has completely shifted our way of living. It has also completely shifted the understanding of politics for many. The working class have become more politically conscious than ever. There have been movements such as BLM and Reclaim These Streets. The People's Welfare Party strongly agrees in changing the system for the better. This is evident in our policies on discrimination, economics, and healthcare. Today, we aim to present our ideas on creating a Wales that suits everyone. The People's Welfare Party put the people as our priority. The current government, it seems, have different interests. They have given nurses a 1% pay rise, whereas there have been a 44% increase for nuclear weapons funding. This 1% is equivalent to the price of a Tesco meal deal, which is appalling and will not suffice. The NHS has been heroic throughout the pandemic and deserve better, as they have been on the front line saving hundreds of lives. As the Secretary for Health, I promise a surplus of funding for the backbone of our society, healthcare workers. This will benefit us as a nation as we will become a healthier country. We intend to train more staff so that the waiting list becomes shorter. They're far too long at the moment. Cancer patients wait 2 months on average for treatment.
Furthermore, I would like to increase the funding for mental health from 600 million to 750 million annually. This is just as essential as it will improve the lives of so many people. A happier country means a better economy and environment. 1 in 4 people will suffer from mental health problems, says Mind. To invest in mental health means to invest in such a vast amount of our population. The People's Welfare Party believes that funding mental health is a major key to improving Wales.
As Minister of Education, my priority for the children of Wales is to ensure an accessible, engaged environment in all schools. This can be achieved by the implementation of laws. We aim to pass the Disability Representation Act in Academia Bill. The bill will warrant wheelchair storage in every school across Wales, as well as ramps and elevators. This ensures errant accessibilities even if no pupils are wheelchair bound. Due to this, disabled people can visit schools without any perpetrations. Moreover, neurodivergent people will be assured a safe place for overstimulation. The bill will prohibit schools from banning noise blockers or phone devices, as these are tools that for many neurodivergent people rely on. Teachers will be taught to give information in auditory formats or hands-on demonstrations. This will enforce diversity and create a safer space for our pupils. The funding from the first policy will go towards school-based counselling services. This can provide children with more support, especially since GCSEs can be very stressful. They can use this funding to give empathy training to teachers with workshops on inset days. There will be a legal requirement to teach children about world topics such as sexual assault, racism, and homophobia. As part of the government's Build Back Better scheme, we will be giving teachers an extra 75 million to provide resources for helping children to catch up. This will provide them help with online school in case of a third lockdown and a pay rise for such essential workers. And will also provide more staff in the education sector. Education is very underfunded at the moment. Many teachers have to buy their own pens. The People's Welfare Party strives to change this.
We intend to hone in on discrimination and bring harsher punishments to those who discriminate in hopes of making a safer, more accepting society. There is no single way to punish discrimination as it comes in many forms and severities. However, we want to be stricter in sentences we give those who commit hate crimes. We would like to see policing crime devolved in Wales. If this was successful, the changes we would propose are a year in jail mandatory for anyone who has committed assault motivated by prejudice. It does not stop there. We also intend to monitor those who work with law and ensure that there is fairness in trials against marginalised folk. This is so important with the deaths of people such as Mahmoud Mohammed Hassan, who fell victim to police brutality. It is proven that Black people are 4 times more likely to go to jail than white people. And the Met's police use of police brutality a third of the time is directed to Black people. Racially marginalised folk are more likely to be erroneously incarcerated, put behind bars for crimes they did not commit. We shall introduce laws to hold police and lawyers accountable for the unbiased treatment of anyone on trial or of suspicion of breaking the law. Our final policy is focused on creating a Green Deal to combat climate change. We will set a carbon tax which will force businesses to pay a certain amount for the excessive use of greenhouse gases. This strives to reduce carbon emissions on a national scale, and corporations will be more likely to switch to environmentally friendly alternatives of production. As a part of our Green Deal, we will decelerate trade with countries such as Norway for oil. This is an attempt to reach net zero emissions by 2030. Our party will also set up the electric car scheme to encourage people to buy electric cars, which will help the environment, as electric cars can release less greenhouse gases than normal cars. Wales can reach net zero emissions through funding green projects such as Swansea Tidal Programme. Investing in renewable energy is important to our party as it is the most efficient alternative to fossil fuels. If we do not act now, then we face the threat of low food and water supply, extreme weather, and possible extinction of the human race. The worst impacts of climate change by 2030 could be irreversible. The People's Welfare Party want change. Change for the environment, for the people, for the better. Thank you for listening. Diolch am wrando.
Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much, People's Welfare Party. You raised some great points there in terms of the funding and the support for the NHS services, the electric car scheme, which I thought was interesting, and the accessibility within schools. Just a reminder, we have got a Q&A function, so if anyone wants to pop a question in there, you're more than welcome to. But I've got a quick question for you, and feel free to whoever can jump in and answer. So you mentioned at the top of your manifesto, the health services was pretty up there. So what support do you think is needed for these services, especially during the pandemic and this difficult time that we found ourselves in?
Well, I think that the government has been neglecting the health services, despite how vital they are to our country and to our people. And I think that a big part of, helping the NHS to flourish into what it should be, to help the doctors, nurses, to help the people of Wales, I think we should encourage nurses and doctors to train for that occupation. And I think that we can do this by rising the pay for NHS workers. And I think that the nurses and doctors especially should have mental health services covered by the government, because they deserve free therapy due to the PTSD that many have gained from the coronavirus pandemic. And I think that that's just so important, since they are, as Phoebe said, the backbone of our community.
Lovely, thank you very much. And if you could turn off your mics and camera, we will now welcome our next party.
Thank you.
And if I could next invite Plurdd Gobaith Cymru from the yw'r, please could you turn your cameras and mics on, and we will be turning back to Welsh, so please use your translation button if needs be. Diolch yn fawr am hynny. Plurdd Gobaith Cymru, da chi eisiau cracio ymlaen efo'ch manifesto chi felly?
Dim problem. Shwmai, croeso. Yn enw ein plaid ni ydy Plurdd Gobaith Cymru. Fy enw I yw'r Rhodri Lewis, dwi'n dod o Sir Benfro, a dyma Morgan o Ynys Môn a Seren o Wrecsam. Ein tri prif polisi ydy yr amgylchedd, datganoli system cyfiawnder droseddol, ac hefyd datblygu cwricwlwm addysg newydd yma yng Nghymru. Rydym hefyd yn teimlo'n gryf iawn dros yr iaith fel pobl ifanc. Mae'r Urdd wedi bod yn darparu addysg awyr agored trwy gyfrwng y Gymraeg ers 1922. Gyda chanmlwyddiant yr Urdd y flwyddyn nesaf ac targed o miliwn o siaradwyr Cymraeg erbyn y flwyddyn 2050, mae'n amser hynod o bwysig felly i'r iaith Gymraeg. Ond yn gyntaf at ein polisi cyntaf, sef y cwricwlwm. Mae'r cwricwlwm blaenorol yn hen ffasiwn ac wedi bod yn rhedeg ers 20 o flynyddoedd bellach. Rydym yn dysgu am hanes Unol Daleithiau America, yr Ail Rhyfel Byd, ond nid oes yna unrhyw sôn am hanes Cymru. Yn ddiweddar, mae protestiadau BLM wedi bod yn pwnc closg yn y newyddion, ond nid ydynt wedi dysgu unrhyw beth am y mater yn yr ysgol. Mae plant yn cael ei addysgu mewn system addysg heb cydwybod am y cymdeithas am y ddiwylliannol o amgylch. Ai dyma wir reswm mae hiliaeth yn dal I fodoli yn y cymdeithas heddiw. Mae sgiliau bywyd syml elfennol yn cael ei fethu yn yr ysgol, sut I gwneud forgais, sut I goginio, neu hyd yn oed sut I gwneud CV. Gyda lecsiwn rownd y cornel, mae'n anodd credu cyn lleied o help rydym wedi cael wrth yr ysgol a sut I gofrestru I bleidleisio. Pa o beth sydd gan pobl ifanc I goroesi yn y byd modern rydym yn byw ynddi. Felly, na I galw ar Seren I fynd at ein ail polisi.
Rydym ni yn anelu I ddarparu cydweithrediad rhwng y cyhoedd a'r Llywodraeth a'r faterion newid hinsawdd trwy gydweithio gyda chymunedau mewn diwydiannau anghynaladwy a fyddai fel arall ar golled oherwydd gweithredoedd yn erbyn cynhesu byd eang. Credym mae'r sector amwyneddiaeth mewn risg yng Nghymru oherwydd cynhesu byd eang, mae bron 60,000 o bobl yn gweithio yn y sector. Rhaid I ni darparu sicrwydd a dymunir rhwng cefnogaeth gynhwysfawr I bawb o bob swydd yn ogystal ag addewid o swyddi gwyrdd yn y dyfodol. Nid yn unig yw ein syniad yn sicrhau yn bod yn byw mewn cymdeithas democrataidd a chydweithredol trwy rando ar sut fath o gefnogaeth mae'r cyhoedd yn ei angen, maent hefyd y polisi sy'n canolbwyntio ar ddigolledu gweithwyr a chymunedau lle mae'r newid I Green New Deal yn effeithio'n uniongyrchol arnynt. Hoffwn gynnig trosglwyddiad cyfiawn sy'n parchu nid yn unig bris amgylcheddol, ond hefyd gydraddoldeb, cyfiawnder cymdeithasol a llais democrataidd sy'n holl bwysig yn ein cymdeithas heddiw.
Noswaith dda. Rhaid I Gymru cael pŵer a cyfieldeb llawn o'r system cyfiawnder troseddol. Fel mae'n sefyll, Cymru sydd gyda'r cyfradd carcharu uchaf orllewin Ewrop, gyda 154 ym mhob 100,000 o boblogaeth Cymru mewn carchardai, a gyda cyfraddau aildroseddu misg pobl ifanc ar ei ucha,
Rhaid creu system i Gymru bydd y Cymru. Fod gan pobl ifanc yr hawl i bleidleisio, rhywsut, mae'r hawl sylfaenol yn efo mamiaeth yn cael ei adnabyddu'n gyfan gwbl. Yng Ngogledd Cymru, does dim cnofan cyfiawnder i'r ifanc. Felly mae rhaid i Gymru glan-gloyw derbyn ei dedfryd ar elfen hyfforddiant a chymorth mewn gwlad ac iaith estron. Sydd o hyn yn deg gynulleidfa, a sy'n hyn yn tystiolaethu fod Llywodraeth San Steffan yn rhoi buddiannau Cymru yn gyntaf. Efallai fod ein iaith ni yn cael ei danseilio heddiw, gyda'n plaid ni yr unig blaid i gyfrannu'n uniaeth Gymraeg, ymwymiadau gwag i sicrhau statws cyfartal i'r iaith. Ond nid hyn yw gweledigaeth i'n plaid ni. Rhaid god cydraddoldeb ym mhob maes ac agwedd y fywyd. By'n plaid ni yn ymrwymo i chwalu'r system cyfiawnder presennol, sy'n rhywiaethol, hiliol, anghyson ac yn hen ffasiwn, ac yn ei le, creu newydd rhagweithiol, gyda ffocws ar adfer, a hyn mewn modd therapiwtig arbenigol. A mae'n anfyddeuol nad yw Llywodraeth San Steffan yn defnyddio'r arian prin cyhoeddus i'r diben gorau. Mae'r system yn ei gyflwr presennol, y peth pella o gyfiawnder, a fel dywedodd Martin Luther King Jr. Bygythiad mwyaf cyfiawnder yw anghyfiawnder. Felly i gloi, by'n plaid ni'n sicrhau fod Cymru ar flaen y gad drwy weithio i newid y system presennol sy'n dal Cymru nôl. Ac yn ei le, creu darpariaeth sy'n deg a chyfiawn, ymdrin â phobl Cymru yn diddydd a gyda pharch, mwyn cyfach anghenion a chreu cymunedau diogol a theg sy'n adfer ac yn ffynnu. Diolch.
A diolch i chi, Plurdd Cymru. A mae gen i gwestiwn, mae rwy'n wedi holi cwestiwn yn yr Q&A. A'r cwestiwn ydy gan Megan, beth byddech chi yn ei wneud i gefnogi ysgolion a cholega i addysgu pobl ifanc am yr hawl i gyfrestru a pleidleisio? A sut fyddech chi'n gweld yr addysgu hyn yn gweithio yn ymarferol? Hapus i'r unrhyw un ateb.
Wel, diolch am y cwestiwn. Chymod, mae fe'n amserol iawn dwi'n credu bod ni yn cael y pleidlais fel pobl 16-17. Mae cael y pleidlais yn rhywbeth mae menwod wedi bod yn dioddefo, maen nhw wedi bod yn dadlau i gael yr hawl i bleidleisio, ond nawr ein siawns ni i bleidleisio yw i. Ond chi'n gwybod, os y'n ni moyn y bleidlais, os y'n ni'n cael y pleidlais, mae rhaid i ni'n gwybod beth ni'n pleidleisio am. Nid, chymod, dwi wedi bod yn yr ysgol, dwi ddim ond i gofrestru achos bod mam a dad wedi gofrestru'n barod, felly bydd yn hawdd iawn i adio fi arno. I ni'n cael sesiynau abiech yn yr ysgol, ond dwi wedi gweld yn y blynyddoedd diwethaf, wrth i fi fynd yn hun, mae'r sesiynau abiech na wedi bod yn lleihau ac yn y diwedd yn y 2 blynedd diwethaf, sa'i wedi cael dim un sesiwn abiech o gwbl. Felly mae angen i ni ddod nôl ar elfennau, i nôl mewn i'r ysgol, a mae gwleidyddiaeth yn rhywbeth, chymod, mae fe'n mynd i effeithio ni pan ni'n henach. I ni wedi gweld cryfachiad yn yr economi, a ni sy'n mynd i fod yn gorfod talu'r pwyth na nôl fel pobl ifanc. Tro bod ni'n cael swyddi, bydd rhaid i ni talu trethu uwch mwyn cael talu y dyled yna nôl. Sut mae fe'n mynd i weithio yn yr ysgolion, yn syml bydd rhaid i'r athrawon, mynd y baich yna, dwi'n deall bod athrawon o dan pwysau mawr ar hyn o bryd o ganlyniad i effeithiau Covid-19, ond yn syml mae angen fwy o buddsoddiad ar gyfer cael fwy o athrawon mewn i'r ysgolion, mae angen fwy o bobl ifanc i gymryd addysg fel cwrsiau yn prifysgol. Mae angen i ni dod â genedlaeth newydd o'r athrawon, a mae angen i moderneiddio y system addysg hollol newydd.
A jyst ar gefn y cwestiwn yna amdan y system addysg, ydych chi sôn ar gefn eich maniffesto amdan cael cwricwlwm newydd. Mae'n y gwestiwn arall yn y Q&A, yn Saesneg. Does your party recognise and support the new curriculum for Wales has... Do your party recognise and support the new curriculum for Wales and that is being implemented ar hyn o bryd? Os na newidiadau pellach sydd angen yn cael ei wneud?
Wel, yn sicr ydy ni yn croesawu yr cwricwlwm newydd yma sydd wedi dod i rym, ond dwi'n credu dyw y cwricwlwm newydd yma ddim yn mynd digon pell. Fel nes i sôn yn y maniffesto, i ni'n dysgu am addysg pob gwlad arall beth i fod, yr ail fel byd, pob gwlad yn y byd, ond ni ddim yn gwybod am hanes ni yn hunain. Felly, pa o beth sydd da ni i ddysgu am hanes ni ein hunain, os na ni'n cael ei ddysgu fe'n yr ysgol. Mae fe'n rhwydd iawn. Dwi'n gallu, dwi wedi dysgu ffiseg, dwi'n gwybod mae'r gloi, mae'r byd yn troi a bethau fel la, ond sa'n gwybod beth yn y milltir sgwar fi fy hun. Felly, yn sicr, mae fe'n, sa'n mynd i gweud, dwi eisiau gweud gair, ond sa'n mynd i weid e. Mae fe'n hollol stupid.
Gret, diolch i chi am gyflwyno Plurdd Gobaith Cymru. Os ga i ofyn i chi tynnu'ch mics a'r fideo off rwan, a na ni cael y grŵp nesaf. Nesaf, mae gennym ni Young People Future yn cynrychioli gwasanaeth iechyd Torfaen. Plîs gall plaid yma troi eu Cymra ymlaen, please. Diolch yn fawr. Diolch am ymuno. Thank you for joining. If you'd like to present us with your manifesto, please.
Hello everyone, we are Young People Future and we will be covering our 5 policies from our manifesto today. Our first policy is improving mental health care and support for young people. We all know that 1 in 4 people struggle with their mental health, and our usual response is encouraging people to get mental health support. But what happens when that support isn't there? A recent study by mentalhealth.org found that 2,410 young people were on a waiting list for mental health support. Every second counts, but every second we waste is closer to risking a person's life. We need to work together to make sure we can encourage and support all young people struggling, not just those who are in the worst critical state. But until we can sort out waiting lists, we would encourage the support and resources are delivered to schools so that they can support their own children until they can get proper support.
Hello. Our second policy is talking about the Young Carers Allowance in education. It needs revisiting as we feel that it's not equal, as a carer out of education for doing minimal jobs such as, let's say they do the dishes every other day and then they go shopping once a week, they'll get full pay for that, while someone in education who does a lot more, such as the shopping every day, making sure there's food on the table, making sure everyone's clean, they'll get no money in education. So what we suppose that needs looking into is the fact that young carers in education should have a way to be more financially stable and able to experience their lives whilst also caring for others.
Our third point is the justice system. We would like to see police and crime devolved in Wales. If this was successful, the changes we propose are that to ensure victims have a better support systems and offenders get the sentences they deserve. We believe the youth justice system needs to change. Many people suffer as a result of the lack and support of communication that is given from the justice system. From my own experience, the justice system I was not given the closure or the support that I needed after a traumatic experience. Many young men and women may feel the same way. This could be from their own experience of abuse, whether physical, mental, or sexual, and their abusers are not given the correct sentence and are walking away free from these crimes. This then makes the victim feel scared, unsafe, and unprotected by the justice system and the people around us. They're then unable to move on with their lives when their abusers are able to get a hold of them in the future. The justice system does not consider the minimal evidence a person may have. This could be because of their age or the circumstances they are in. For example, a person may have been assaulted physically or sexually, but not raped. This is very hard to prove, and many young men and women do not get closure for this. However, females ages 16 to 19 are 4 times more likely than the general population to be victims of rape, attempted rape, and sexual assault. This statistic is from brain.org.
Our next point is removing prejudice. Many young people in minority groups across Wales face prejudice today, socially and in education. Despite a variety of campaigns to raise awareness on issues such as LGBTQ+ rights, young queer people still face discrimination from their peers in school. We at Young People Future believe that it is imperative that young people in schools are thoroughly educated on equality and diversity to create inclusive environments and normalize people's differences, as well as put sanctions in place for those who are homophobic. In schools, 77% of students have stated that they have not discussed their sexuality because they are uncomfortable to do so. If I were to be discriminated against in the workplace for my sexual orientation, it would be taken seriously by my employer. However, when I have been discriminated against in school by other students and being called homophobic slurs, teachers haven't necessarily taken it seriously and the students haven't really been spoken to. Therefore, we need to educate younger children now to avoid behaviour like this in the future and making students feel uncomfortable.
I'll be speaking about looked after children. In 2020, there were 7,170 recorded looked after children in Wales, 38% more than in 2010, showing that more and more children and young people are ending up within the care system as time goes on. The majority of these young people come from a household of abuse or neglect and especially prone to having poor mental health. Although support is provided by CAMS for the most intensive cases and there are other social care teams working around these young people, it is clear that more could be done to support looked after children with their well-being and learning potential, as lack underperform significantly compared to their counterparts not in care. Therefore, we suggest making it mandatory to have a team of professionals within schools designated on improving the well-being and prospects of looked after children by providing extra academic support specialised for them, well-being provisions, and one-to-one support sessions if necessary to prioritise the mental health of these students as well as increase their academic outcomes. Thank you for listening to our manifesto.
Lovely, thank you so much. Some really important points in that as part of your manifesto. Another question here, mental health seem to be a theme in a lot of the things that you spoke about. So what supports do you think should be offered to young people who are on the waiting list currently while they are waiting to be seen by a mental health professional?
Firstly, they should not be left alone at all by doctors or services like CAMS, even if it is just an email once a week or once a month to check in, monitor the symptoms, monitor the thoughts, as well as allowing them to have a time to vent if they need to. It would obviously be nicer if they could get proper mental health support quicker, but until that issue can be sorted, contact should not be lost. Once someone has said they wanted help, they should be kept in contact with, because an email can take 5 minutes to send a bulk email to everyone so that you have monitored records. We would also believe that schools, the NHS, youth services, charities should all be working together in partnership. So when someone goes to a GP and asks for help, but the waiting list could be up to 4 months long or even 18 months long, they should then be referred by their GP to someone within their local youth service or within their school or within a charity so that they can get support until they get proper professional support.
Great, thank you. And I'll pass it on to you, Leo. You mentioned equality and sort of not enough support in schools for communities that are marginalised, or enough education around LGBT issues and sex education in particular. What improvements would you like to see within the new curriculum to tackle discrimination within schools and towards those communities?
Thank you. I genuinely think that people nowadays are a lot more inclusive than they have been before, and education's in a decent state at the moment, although there do need to be improvements. And I think that people should be educated more so, and it should be brought up upon when people do make these mistakes. I believe that, yes, so people need to be spoken to when they are making these wrong decisions and being prejudiced towards other people and discriminating against them, because it is against the law, and I don't think it's taken as seriously in school environments as it should be taken, whereas in the workplace, as I said, it would be taken seriously.
Lovely, thank you very much. And if I can ask all of you to turn your mics and cameras off, thank you very much. And next we have the youth of Crughywel from Crughywel High School. Please could you turn your cameras and mics on for me? Thank you for joining me, and if you would like to start with your manifesto.
Good evening all, my name is Neve. With me are Sylvie, Eleanor and Olivia. We are Crughywel Youth, here to present to you our manifesto. We believe that to protect and safeguard the future, we must first invest in our own education. And so many aspects of our manifesto focus in and around education. In the modern age, inequalities once perceived to be conquered are reclaiming the spotlight and entering conversations once more. Arguably, one of the most prominent issues is that of gender inequalities. Our party believes in the investment in education. It is the forefront of progression. In this sense, we pledge to invest in a higher quality, expanded system of education, which addresses gender equality issues in a non-judgmental way. We promise to educate a generation into removing harmful stigmas and stereotypes. According to the Crime Survey for England and Wales, 1 in 4 women over the age of 16 have experienced sexual assault or attempted sexual assault at least once in their life. 1 in 14 have experienced rape or attempted rape. It is clear to us that the only way to decrease the volume of sexual harassment in the short term is to introduce laws and legislations. Therefore, we will introduce legislation that prohibits harassment on the streets, such as invasion of space, sexual harassment, and unwanted sexual touch. In addition to this, we will encourage the use of newly created legislation that provides screenshot controls on all social medias, as a move to rapidly decrease online sexual violence and harassment against women, girls, and boys. Wales has proven itself to be at the forefront in the United Kingdom for tackling many social issues. Let gender inequalities become the next.
Hi, my name is Sylvie and I will be talking about the environment. We believe that the environment is a huge issue in the world and which we have to act fast on. For being in a school that has very strong opinions about the environment, I have noticed that we are taught all about the issues in the world and not how to solve them. If you vote for our party, we'll work with young people to find the best solutions to deal with this problem. Scientists have discovered that we are the first generation to know that we are destroying the world, and wouldn't you rather know that we were the first one to stop it as soon as we knew? We would be saving future generations from a huge issue, and we would also be making sure that it would never happen again. During COVID, there's been a huge decrease in carbon emissions. This means that we have an opportunity to turn our actions around before it's too late. This is our last chance to change what we have done. As young people, we have a responsibility to change what past generations have pinned on us. If you vote for us, we will fight to have a voice in politics, and we will fight to have a power in the actions taken forward. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Eleanor, and I'll be talking about education. Standards, gender roles, and your set-up surroundings affect growing up. From authority figures in classrooms, you may get the same experience. Push gender roles, don't act like this, don't wear this. Teaching them this may help them to fit in, but creates bullying if you deviate away from these stereotypes. It's cheaper and easier to teach about the norm, because when you are given freedom, some parents feel their children are uncontrollable and don't fit in situations like sexuality and gender discovery. From the age 4 to 8, children are in classroom settings for long periods of time, and authority figures have the biggest impact on their thinking. Children are having their ideas moulded and shaped, and if the influence is negative, you're going to continue with a negative view and not enjoy school. We pledge that the structure and curriculum of early education will not just be focused on passing, but being happy, not just relying on success and focusing on creating a more positive, free-flowing environment, because that is much more important for the mental health and young minds of tomorrow.
Hi, my name's Olivia. Young people's mental well-being has never been so fragile. Social media has helped us in ways, but also give us unrealistic body images to aspire to, and the ability for bullying to be 24/7. The COVID-19 lockdown response has also had a disproportionate and damaging effect on the mental health of young people globally. Being a teenager in school is already an anxious period in your life, but support that from friends help us get through it. To have that then taken away for long periods of time so that you're only communicated to via social media, the only connection to teachers and peers is via screen, is so difficult. The legacy of the impact COVID on young people's mental health is yet to be quantified or realised. Young people's mental health services are already overstretched. Community mental health support waiting lists are unmanageable and may be offered too late to support young people with high-level mental health issues and supports and needs. We would fund these services appropriately to help young people when they need it, and we would set up a specific and fund to support young people adversely affected by the pandemic. My pledge as a young person is we resource young mental health services as a priority. The future of our young people is too important to neglect. Thank you for listening.
Lovely, thank you very much. There's quite a few questions come around for you guys. We'll start off just on the back of what you said then about the education system and how mental health needs to be sort of get more support. How do you think that schools can help support students' mental health? What's a few of the ways that they can help do that?
By training teachers, so more support groups in schools, like daily checkups for individual people, because it's not really that nice just to talk to someone you don't really know. But if you build like a connection with them and build a trust, there's more chance of you becoming more safe around them. And school is a safe environment, but you have to make it the safe environment it needs to be.
Lovely,
So,
thank you very much. And there's a question about climate. Climate change has been at the focus of a lot of the manifestos this evening. And if I can give you this question from the chat. So it's, what would you do to increase the awareness of older generations talking about pollution and environmental damage? And how would you try and change their behaviours and attitudes towards climate change?
Well, I think that they are, well, I don't really like to say this, but they are probably the reason why it's all been pinned on us. And I'm not saying it's fair. And I think that I think that we should do a lot more speeches in politics. I think we should do a lot more public speeches to let them know, and maybe to have, change opinions about the environment and make them aware. And so maybe that would change their views quite a lot.
Amazing. And Niamh, you mentioned about gender equality, as particularly in somewhere like the Senedd, representation is really important. There's a question here that says, great to see so many young people presenting this evening. Do you think that young people could be encouraged to use their voices and to be taken more seriously in politics? And maybe that would sort of, get more representation of women in politics. That would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think more people over this last lockdown have become more interested in politics simply because there was a lack of stuff to do. So people saw it in the news and thought, oh, we can get interested in this. And I think that kind of promotion of it has become really relevant in today's society. So many more people are talking about it from every age group. I think a lot of the time it's difficult to see through the media and that kind of thing, because sometimes they can be biased. But I really think that talking about it in schools and like reflecting true facts and that kind of thing is the best way to introduce more people into the topic. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, girls. And if you could turn your cameras and mics off, we will move on to our next party. So next we have the Evergreen Party from Ceredigion Youth Council. Please could you turn your cameras and mics on for me?
Hi.
Hello, thank you for joining me. When you are ready, if you could give us your manifesto.
Good afternoon, Pnawn da. We are the Evergreen Party. First of all, I would like to thank you all for being here, and I would like to pass you to Avon for our first policy.
Hi, that's me. I'm Avon. Our first policy is on the environment, which has been a policy that's been brought up by many of the parties this evening, because we feel it is something that is hugely important to focus on. Wales has a target of a net zero of carbon emissions by 2050. And to ensure that these cuts are made, we believe that young people need to be educated within schools as to why it's important and what they can do to help. This involves integration of education within curriculum for both primary and secondary years, all the way through compulsive education, in a way that makes the education engaging while being as informative as possible. We're aware that policies such as eco schools already do very similar things, but we'd like to make this compulsory so that every single school has to take part and has to educate the young people on their future and what they can do to preserve the world we've been given. Thank you. If I could pass on to the next person.
Good evening, I am Lloyd and I'm going to be discussing our mental health policy. So Public Health Wales Observatory notes that there is some sort of spiral of decline as a pupil goes through secondary school, where the quality of life and sort of the levels of loneliness that they experience deteriorate as they go from year 7 to year 11. So around 1 in 3 pupils who are secondary school age experience loneliness during school holidays, but this rises from just a quarter of year 7s up to 40% of year 11s. And overall life satisfaction falls from 90 to 80% from year 7 to year 11. So there is clearly something wrong there and more support is definitely needed, which is why we're going to be demanding that every school has support available, counselling 5 days a week during term time. And at all times, including during school holidays, there should be someone who can be contacted at any time and a response received within 48 hours. And we will also ensure that school staff are even better trained to pick up on sort of differing behaviour patterns and high levels of stress so that they can deal with that as well. And we hope that these will help generally young mental health. So I'll pass on to Avon now, who will discuss the LGBT side of things.
Thank you. Coming off the back of that, we as a party believe that it's really, really important to ensure that the most vulnerable people within society are given the help that they might need. And this includes the LGBT plus community. People who are LGBT plus are significantly more likely to suffer from mental health issues, ranging from low self-esteem, depression and anxiety, all the way to things like eating disorders and substance abuse, which is largely due to the discrimination and exclusion that they face. We believe that essentially what needs to be done is more education and better training for those who can help. This involves NHS staff being trained to recognise signs of depression within young people who are LGBT plus, and to make them aware of the issues that they could be facing due to their identity, and similar training for teachers to help spot these signs in school, and also funding within the NHS for sort of LGBT specific and particularly trans specific areas, as the waiting lists for things like gender reassignment surgery and hormone replacement treatment are significantly too long and are causing significant amounts of distress for young people who are transgender. If I could move us on to Billy, thank you.
My policy as a party, we believe that climate change, of course, is a very big thing for Wales and of course the entire world. And one way we feel that as a nation, we can help contribute to the global efforts of decreasing carbon emissions is by proposing that the Welsh Government fund a free public transport network for anyone under 20 and university students. Now, this is, in our opinion, incredibly necessary, as it could cut down on hundreds of thousands of car journeys every year. And school pupils, especially in secondary school, over 29% of pupils already travel by bus. So it's nothing new to introduce, if that makes sense. What we are proposing is that people get used to using public transport, not only as a way of transport for school, but also as a general day-to-day life, as this could cut down on thousands, hundreds of thousands of car journeys every single year. And the effects this could have on a net zero carbon emission Wales by 2050, as the government's already set out, could be massively efficient. I also believe that though we are in a COVID environment, that buses, as long as we adhere to strict and the regulated COVID guidelines, that there shouldn't be a problem at all. For our last policy, I would like to pass on to Lloyd.
So our final policy is concerning the Welsh Baccalaureate, which is sort of an interesting one because there's so many different approaches that could be used, but we think that the best way to do it, in line with sort of what is best for young people, is that the subject is sort of massively reformed so that it's no longer a qualification in the way that it is. The influence of other subjects in the outcome of Welsh Bac is gone, so it's on its own. And a Senedd report from a couple of years ago actually said that Welsh Bac has potential, but it acknowledges that it's not actually being reached. So what we would like to do is change it so that it's focused more on the actual practicalities of making that jump from school to university or employment or apprenticeships. And we'll also make sure that after the GCSE level, that schools should not be requiring people to do it. And in a sense, it will focus as well on mental well-being and sort of living healthily. So we think it should be reformed into more of a PSHE sort of qualification rather than an actual baccalaureate. So that's all of our policies, and appreciate any questions.
Lovely, interesting on the Welsh Bac. I remember doing that and thinking, what am I going to use my Welsh Bac for? So that's quite interesting that you bring that up. What kind of sort of skills and subjects would you like to see on as part of the Welsh Baccalaureate then?
I think we should focus on ways of reducing stress levels among young people and how to set out your future pathway. So if you want to write a cover letter or a university application, that you know exactly how to do that, and that those are skills that can be established in the GCSE part of Welsh Bac. So if someone, for example, doesn't go to sixth form, they've already got the skills down that they need to be able to do that.
And you mentioned briefly about mental health, especially in and out of the school term. What training do you think that teachers should have to help young people deal with their mental health and recognising the symptoms within that as well?
I think teachers, for the most part, they are quite good at identifying levels of stress, but they need to I feel they need to look more at the less obvious signs that someone is stressed, and sort of if they're looking around a lot or something like that, that means they're stressed. And if someone's behaving a little bit unusually, not necessarily disruptive, but there's something not quite right, that teachers should be taught to sort of pick up on it and sort of take it further if necessary. So refer them to the counselling of the school or elsewhere.
Amazing, thank you. And I'll go over to you, Avon. Obviously, being the Evergreen Party, climate change was at the top of your list this evening. Is there much work to do around the language that we use around climate change? We've mentioned a lot of targets here, but it's known as a sort of climate emergency. Do you think that language like that is important when it comes to sort of setting targets and drawing sort of awareness around the issue?
I do think it could be, but I also do think we should be careful with the language you use, especially with many young people nowadays experiencing what is known as climate anxiety and being worried about climate change and being so concerned for their future. So I think if there's a way we could use language that shows how pressing the matter is without necessarily creating a panic about it and without putting too much stress on the already stressful lives of young people, I feel that should be really, really important.
Lovely, thank you very much. And there's a question for you here, Billy. You mentioned about transport and the free buses for anyone under, is it 25 or 30? I think you said
20.
20, okay. Oh, that doesn't include me, okay. That's fine. There is available funding for 3 transport networks, or sorry, let me read that properly. Is there available funding for free transport network, or will the government be decreasing funding for other areas in order to support your quest for free buses?
I think the government, if they were to obviously adopt this policy, that I think funding would come primarily from other services, because of course the government fund a lot of public services, some of which that looking at as a young person and as young people as a party, we can see that funding is not necessarily going to the right places. So I believe that moving funds around and maybe just as a starter, I mean, to introduce the policy, we could even lower the number to around 18. And with obvious signs of success, then of course, more funding could come from the government directly.
And there's another question around that as well. Being from rural, Megan, this is from Megan, being from a rural area of Wales, which impact of a free public transport system would have an impact on young people living there. Do you think that it will have the same impact on urban areas too?
I think it will generally. I know living in an urban area, in a non-urban area myself, that the buses are quite crucial. But we see cities like Cardiff and Swansea with large bus networks, especially for people living just outside of the cities. It's crucial for people to be able to go into town, maybe to go see friends or go shopping, things like this that would necessarily not, like things that people can do that they might not necessarily have done before. Not only are we improving the way of life for young people, we're giving them more opportunities to socialize with friends in a more welcome environment without the stress of figuring out transport.
Lovely, thank you very much. There's another question around the Welsh Baccalaureate. So if the Welsh Baccalaureate were to be changed and made non-compulsory, do you think that students would change their attitudes towards it for the better? Or do you think it would lose value compared to other subjects? I suppose, Lloyd, you can answer that one.
I think that if schools should be well within their right to encourage but not force. So if schools can convince pupils that Welsh Bac is beneficial in the way that it should be, then that I think it would be a good thing to make it optional, so that people can they'll know that what they're doing to them is actually meaningful. Because if you're doing something that you don't want to do in between subjects that you've chosen at A level, it can seem a bit more like a chore. But if you're there voluntarily and you can get your head around its benefits, then it can be better.
Lovely, thank you very much. And to close, you can turn off your mics and your videos. Thank you very much for that. And thank you for those that ask the questions to the Evergreen Party. They can turn their cameras off now. If I could welcome back the first party just for a closing question. So if we can get, see, who was the first party? We've got the People's Welfare Party. If you could turn your mics off, we're just going to close with one question. So the question is, if you were to describe a Wales that you would like to see, if we could get one word each, that would be great. One word to describe a Wales that you would like to see.
Sorry, do you want to go first, Ella? You can go first.
Yeah, sure. I think the Wales I want to see, is a Wales for everyone. So if I were to put that into one word, I would say inclusive. For all classes, all races, gender, sexualities. I want everyone to be treated the same way. And I believe that that's what the People's Welfare Party stands for.
Lovely. What about you, Phoebe? Can you think of a word?
Well, the word that I think of is green, because I think the most pressing issue right now is climate change. So I feel like we should, yeah.
That should be a priority. Great. And a final word from you, Corey. Can you think of something that you'd like to see for Wales?
Fair and safe for all, I think.
Lovely. And that's a nice way to bring that to a close. If you can turn your mics and cameras off, we can now go.
Thank you.
So with that being said, we are now opening the live vote. A box will shortly appear on your screen and you will be asked to vote once for the party of your choice based on the manifestos that you have just heard this evening. The voting will be open for 30 seconds, so you should see a box up on your screen now. And I'll just turn that to the side. I am sure I speak for all of us when I say that you are inspirational role models for young people. I've been purely amazed at the things I've heard today. And with voting age now being lowered to 16 in Wales, it is more than important now, more than ever, to be facilitating conversations around young people having a voice, voting and drawing attention to the upcoming Senedd elections. If you are yet to register, then the closing date is the 19th of April, and we will repost the link in the Q&A section for you to use. Is everyone getting their votes in? Some really good points that were raised today. I'm very, very impressed. And I'll be reading every one of the political manifestos with great detail now that I've heard these from you guys. So, still got some people left to vote. I hope everyone has felt great about taking part today. You should be very proud of the presentations that you're able to give of your manifestos. Very professional. I think the politicians should be quaking in their boots for the politicians of the Welsh, of Wales's future. Okay. Should be long now. Right. That should bring a vote to a close. So we do have a winner, and I can announce that the winner is Young People Future. So if you would like to turn your mics on, and then we can give you some congratulations. You got your microphone there?
Yeah.
Congratulations, Young People Future. How do you feel?
A bit shocked.
Are you shocked?
Yeah.
Leo, how do you feel? You seem a bit beside yourself there.
Yeah, I'm a bit shocked as well, to be honest. Yeah, we all worked hard on this and coming up with our manifesto together, so I'm glad it's paid off for us.
Great. Any final thoughts from anyone? Were you expecting it at all?
Partially confident.
Yeah, confidence is a good word.
Well, congratulations. Jordan, Kyle, any final words?
Really, just, trying to do what's best for all of us. Really bringing up the points that, a lot of young people our age are too afraid to say because they feel like they've not really got a place to speak. So having us on the front will be able to open up new ways to enforce a better future for everyone, hence the name. Not just Wales, but eventually it becomes recognized everywhere. Social media is so big these days that little things, everyone can see. So yeah, that's how I want to leave my piece.
Lovely. Thank you, and a big congratulations to you, the winning party. Round of applause for you. If I could just ask you to close your cameras and your mics and go and celebrate now. Lovely, thank you very much. So I will now be, thank you. I will now be closing in Welsh. So diolch I bawb sydd wedi rhoi ei amser I fod yn rhan o'r digwyddiad hwn, a rhai ymunodd â ni a pobl o Cymru I gyd I wrando ar y pobl ifanc heno. Wedi dweud hynny, mae'r etholiad hwn yn un pwysig oherwydd bydd yn penderfynu pwy sy'n gwneud y penderfyniadau sy'n effeithio ar ein bywydau ni I gyd ac ar ein dyfodol ni. A gofal iechyd, a gawn ni I addysg, amgylchedd a I swyddi. Mae'r pobl sydd yn y Llywodraeth yn gyfrifol am wario dros 17 biliwn y flwyddyn yng Nghymru ar y pethau hyn. Os ydych chi'n gallu pleidleisio a eisiau helpu I wneud gwahaniaeth, yna cyfrestrwch I bleidleisio erbyn yr 19 o Ebrill ar gyfer etholiad ar y 6 o Fai. Ewch allan I lledaenu'r gair ac I annog eich ffrindiau a'ch teulu I gymryd rhan. Os ydych chi am ddysgu fwy amdan bleidleisio 16, awch I'r gwefan y Senedd, lle mae adnoddau ar gael ar eich gwefan, ac mae nhw hefyd ar gael I gyflwyno gweithdai ar-lein I ysgolion, colegau a I grwpiau ieuenctid. Felly cysylltwch â'r Senedd os hoffwch chi ddysgu mwy. Unwaith eto, diolch I chi gyd ac gobeithio gewch chi wythnos gwych. Nos da, diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much.